And we're back with the Late Night Showgram. I'm David Cooper. I am joined by the Executive Director of Youth Without Shelter and a Etobicoke shelter supporting and housing more than 1,000 homeless youth every year. We're going to talk about the homelessness crisis amongst kids, students, young adults. He, of course, Steve Doherty. Thanks for being here, Steve.
David, thank you so much for having me. It's a really great opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, and said no one ever about being on this show. Maybe some other show, maybe the network we're on, but not me. You can't. You'll see, Steve. You'll see.
Well, let's see how it plays out. I'll have some guarded optimism.
I'm just messing with you. Okay, so enough jokes aside, I wanna talk about the crisis. I want to talk about how many. When you think of homeless folks, at least stereotypically, you don't think of kids. I mean, very rarely you might think of kids that are just sort of in a shelter with their mother, but it's pretty rare, and it is a serious and alarming problem. Like, how many homeless kids are there out there, let's say in Ontario where you work?
Well, I want to kind of narrow it down. So our sort of client base is 16 to 24 years of age is the designation for us. You're looking at anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 young people without a place to call home every single night in Toronto. And, that doesn't count oftentimes the hidden homeless. The young people that are couch surfing and trying to find a way to get by. And when you start thinking about those numbers in a place like Toronto, it's really quite staggering. And we've got, just over 450 shelter beds available for those young people. So it's a lot of folks that are facing some really hard times.
Yeah. And especially, I always think about it breaks my heart to think about it right now with the cold spell that we're going through. Another thing that's not visible that when I found out the statistics about, I was just alarmed, was homeless kids in university, students who are going to class and they have no home and they're just trying to educate themselves so they can have a decent future. Can you shed light on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're looking around, most recent studies were looking anywhere between 4 and 6% of all post-secondary education students in the province are facing homelessness. They're doing that same thing. They're doing that couch surfing. They're staying with friends for as long as they can until their welcome runs out. They're trying to find a place to be. It's shocking. So our stay in school program, we have a 20-bed stay in school program. So if you're going to high school, college, or university, as long as you're going to school full time, we support you with everything that you need to be successful. Many of those students are college and university students referred to us by student services because they found out that they're facing homelessness. So they're actively experiencing homelessness. You start looking at in a larger scope, housing crisis in places like Kingston or Guelph or University of Toronto. These are real problems that we're looking at. So you've got all these other challenges going on, and then you've got another barrier to success that's thrown in their way. These are really serious things that I think sometimes, like you said, if we don't see it, sometimes we wonder if the problem is really there. Well, you know what? I can tell you that the problem is actually there.
Yeah, and I think to that end, when I think about why this happens, people have a lot of opinions, but those people with these opinions, they've never seen it. They've never worked amongst these kids. I'm just curious from your perspective, what are some of the ways in which this can happen to people?
Well, you know what? People love those stereotypes because they're really easy to dismiss the other in our society, whether it's homelessness or something else. So, those, they just didn't want to follow the rules. Oh, they were just drinking and doing drugs. You know what? That's an easy out. That doesn't actually accurately reflect the reasons for homelessness amongst young people. The vast majority of young people that end up in the shelters, they've experienced trauma and abuse. And if you think about neglect is abuse.
Yeah.
So they've experienced this, and it's, I would say, the great majority, it's through no fault of their own. So many times it's circumstantial, and then, you throw on top COVID and the restrictions and the economic piece that this has happened, as well as the mental health piece. This problem has just been exacerbated simply because of the crisis that we're all facing. But no, the easy answer is, it's their choice. Or, you know what? That's a really easy way to dismiss. I would love some of those people to come and meet some of the young people that call YWS home, and they will be astonished at just the smarts and the drive and just some really great kids that I've had the great fortune to serve during my time. So yeah, it's sometimes stereotypes make things easy, but you know what? These kids are not a stereotype. These are some really incredibly talented kids that have bright futures if they're given the right situation and the right ability to thrive.
Yeah, whenever I hear those opinions from people, I'm like, how many homeless folks have you talked to about this? Unhoused folks, unhoused folks, have you talked to about this? And the answer is always zero. Always zero.
Exactly.
So,
right.
Yeah.
You know, my friend told me this, and my friend's got this opinion because he read this article. Well, you know what? The reality is that we're really fortunate. I mean, even during the COVID lockdown, we had over 2,000 people volunteer for us. It was all remote and stuff, but so many of the volunteers that come through our doors in normal times, they get a chance to meet these young people and have conversations with them and see the incredible potential that all of them have. And that is our job, is to reduce barriers. We believe in equality of opportunity because I really believe in the strength and the resilience of these young people. We're a resilience-based model, but we're also trauma-informed. So we've got to understand where people are coming from, but we see their potential. And we see it every single day, and even after their graduation from the program. It's really, really amazing thing to see.
Yeah. What does that look like when folks graduate and they're sort of on the other end of it?
Well, you know what? Our Stay in School program is a great example. We've got, depending on what year, between 82 and 87% of all of our residents who go through the Stay in School program graduate. We've got Ontario scholars. They're graduating as an Ontario scholar when they go through the program because, again, you've got the supports in place. You've got the technology that you need, books, paper, all those things that you need, and you've got someone supporting you along the way. Whereas you're looking at around 30 to 35% is the graduation rate for youth facing homelessness across the country. So to me, it's a perfect example of if you support people the right way with the things that they need, right? Reduce the barriers. They have a chance to thrive.
Yeah.
Which brings them up, equal to or above some of the graduation rates across the province. It's really incredible stuff to see.
I love that you have real data that speaks volumes and it's not opinions. That really helps folks. So you touched upon one of the reasons for people who are unhoused is mental health stuff, which I know isn't always. People assume that's the story all the time, and it's not. But it is the story some of the time. How serious of a problem is it with unhoused kids?
Well, you take those problems. I mean, across the country, about 20-25% of all people experiencing mental health issues are under the age of 25, mm-hmm. right? So you just take that and extrapolate it into the pressures that they're also dealing with finding a place to live and clothes and food. That Maslow hierarchy of needs, sort of that baseline.
Yeah.
If you take that, 80, I think it was around 85 to 86% of all youth in the last national survey expressed that, in fact, they were feelings of depression and anxiety were elevated for them. So you put all of that together, and you've got some young people that, to do it on your own is really tough. To do it on your own, if you've got a family and a support system, those other things in place is already tough enough. Mm-hmm. So you add all those other pieces. These are some kids that are experiencing some high stress levels when they come in. Any of us would be. Where am I going to live tonight? Where am I going to eat? What's my future? So you put all of those pieces together. That's why we focus really so much on our wraparound services. We just recently hired a fantastic clinical manager and has come in. We elevated our mental health services. We've already got housing and aftercare support. We've got our life skills and employment, right? We've got our case management services. We knew that mental health was really a big piece of what these folks need to be successful. So we've brought that in. And that's the kind of supports that people need in order to be successful. And it's tough. I mean, it's happening across the country right now. With the COVID lockdowns and restrictions, kids are not going to school. And where do they get a lot of the mental health supports? They get it at school because that's where people recognize they're having a tough time.
Yeah.
The provincial government more than doubled the funding. Unfortunately, it was late 2019 for in-school mental health supports. You know what? And if kids aren't going to school, those kids are not being identified. We've got kids living at home. We've got the University of Calgary 3 weeks ago releasing their stats at more than double the level of intensity and number of cases of depression and anxiety amongst young people across the country. We're seeing it. We're living it every single day. It's a tough situation. I like to say, I know we all wanted to flatten the curve when it came to COVID. My message has been clear, and McMaster Children's Hospital has echoed it far more eloquently than I am. My opinion was there's other curves that need to be flattened. There really are other curves. And I think sometimes we really need to think about the mental health of young people and getting back to as close to a normal life as possible.
Yeah, I like how you're sort of mentioning these stats as they come to all young people. When you take away housing security, where am I going to get my next meal? Where's my next sleep going to come from? It's a real pressure cooker and awful stuff. How can we help? You know, we hear these stories in the media and we think, I want to help, but I just don't know how. What are some ways in which folks can help?
We have multiple ways at Youth Without Shelter. You go to yws.on.ca and you can find out ways to get involved. We really rely heavily on our corporate donors. More than half of our annual operating budget is through donations and fundraising. So we've got our amazing corporate partners, but we also have like the vast number of people as private citizens who donate to what we're doing. And again, the volunteers that come in, we can't do the work that we do without volunteers helping us. We just can't. We don't have the funding. We don't have the infrastructure to handle it. So people can commit, they can be mentors for some of our young people, for our stay in school, as well as our shelter side. Lots of the young people on the shelter side also go to school and they're also working, right? They're doing part-time. They're working really hard. Mentorship that is available, becoming involved in some of our fundraising committees. If you want to make a real substantive difference in the life of a homeless young person and work with us to help eliminate youth homelessness, volunteer with us. We've got advocacy that's available as well. But there's so many ways that people can help out. And if, you know, the simplest way is go to our website and check it out.
Okay, and one more time, Youth Without Shelter, the website, yws.on.ca. Steve Doherty, the executive director there. Steve, thanks so much for being here.
David, thank you for having me on here. I certainly appreciate it.
Of course. It was great to have you on. I'm David Cooper. This is the Late Showgram.